The retribution of Rosewood. My son cleaned out my bank account and took his wife and her mom to Miami Beach. I just smiled to myself, and 3 days later he called me sobbing. Mom, what did you do? My retribution was complete. The day I needed to breathe the most was the very day my son took every single dime without even leaving a note. Eleanor Ellie, May Rosewood froze for a long time. She sat on her old worn cloth armchair, the same one she bought when Jaden turned 7, using the first decent paycheck she earned cleaning homes in the Hamptons. In front of her, the cell phone screen glowed with a notification that chilled her blood. Available balance $0. She read it again and again and a fourth time. Her hands trembled not from old age, though she was 68 years strong, but from something deeper, a sickening knot that forms when the soul understands but the heart refuses to accept. She called the bank. A robot answered. Then a human representative tried to ask questions. They told her the movements had been made online. Wire transfers for large amounts totaling over $180,000. It was her entire life's work, her savings, her security, her only safety net. And where did the money go? She asked, her voice broken as if she knew the answer, but needed to hear it from someone else. It was all transferred to an account in the name of Jaden Arthur Rosewood. Ma'am, the executive replied indifferently. Do you want to file a fraud report? Ellie didn't respond. She hung up without saying a word. Silence filled the house. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock in the kitchen and the buzz of a dying fluorescent light bulb. Outside, the ice cream truck played its familiar tune, oblivious to the abyss that had just opened inside her. Then the landline rang, the old phone she kept out of habit. Hello? She said, her voice flat. Ellie, honey, did you see your Jaden's Insta? It was the excited voice of Brenda, her longtime neighbor. He's in South Beach, child eating fancy food with his wife and mother-in-law. Lord, what a life they live. They look like movie stars. Ellie swallowed hard. Her soul seemed to leave her body for an instant. She walked slowly to her room, opened the drawer where she kept her old smartphone, and searched for her son's profile. She wasn't big on social media, but she followed him from a distance like someone peering through a window at a life that no longer belonged to them. There he was, Jaden, her only son, the boy she brought into the world with pain and raised alone since his father left her for another woman, the same son she gave everything to, even the family land her parents left her so he could go to college. He was smiling, a glass in hand, dressed in a crisp white shirt, embracing Tiffany, his wife, and Rhonda, the mother-in-law, who always looked down her nose at Ellie. The photo caption read, "Miami, my new beginning. I deserve this." And in the comments, Tiffany had written, "Good things come to those who wait. Thanks for everything, mama-in-law," with a money emoji. Ellie didn't cry. She didn't scream or break anything. She just stood there holding the phone like a burning brick. Then, without anyone to notice, she smiled. But it was a different kind of smile, as if she finally understood something she had avoided seeing for years. Far away under the cloudy sky and among the palm streets of South Beach, Jaden raised his glass without guilt. "See," Tiffany said, sipping expensive bubbly. "It was a good idea to take the money. She's going to kick the bucket soon anyway. Better we use it before it goes to medical bills." Rhonda, her mother, let out a harsh laugh. Clueless old lady. She doesn't even know what an airport is. She was never going to do anything useful with that cash. Jaden didn't say anything. He looked at the ocean with shining eyes. But something was churning inside him, though he kept quiet just as he had learned to do since he was a boy, and was hungry, and his mother would tell him, "Hold on, baby, we'll have it tomorrow." The walls of Ellie's house seemed older that night. Everything was in its place, but nothing felt the same. On the shelf were photos of Jaden, small in preschool, in his first middle school uniform the day he received his college diploma. Everything she had done, she did for him. At 18, she sold her engagement ring to pay for his high school. At 23, she gave him the family land her daddy left her in rural Georgia. At 30, she helped with the wedding expenses, even though Tiffany never cared for her. Ellie cooked for him, washed his clothes, and cleaned up after him, and he only drifted further away. "Mom, you don't understand this world," he'd say dismissively. "Things aren't done like they used to be. Tiffany and I have big plans, and Son, I'm part of those plans. You'll always be in my heart, Mama, but you can't be tied to me for life." A week before discovering the betrayal, Ellie had tried to visit Jaden at his condo in Studio City. She brought a tray of her famous fried chicken and collard greens that she made herself. She rang the bell. No one opened the door. She waited under the sun sitting on a bench for 2 hours until the doorman approached her. "Are you looking for Mr. Jaden Rosewood?" "Yes, I'm his mother." "Ah, well, I was instructed not to let you in if you come unannounced." Ellie swallowed. "And why is that I couldn't tell you, ma'am? But that's what they told me." She walked back home. She didn't take the metro bus. She wanted the air to hit her face, even if it was hot and dirty. She thought of every meal she denied herself, every dawn she worked overtime, every penny she saved for her son. That same night, Brenda came to visit. She brought pecan pie and coffee. "You've always been strong, Ellie. Don't let this break your heart. Jaden is young. Maybe he'll come to his senses." Ellie sighed, her gaze distant. "Do you think children ever regret it, Brenda?" "Yes, of course they do. When their mother isn't around, they realize everything. Well, I hope it's not too late when he realizes." "And what are you going to do?" Ellie looked up. In her eyes was something different, something that hadn't been there before. "I'm going to smile just like they taught me." Brenda frowned. "Smile? What do you mean I've cried enough, Brenda? Now I'm going to smile in silence because I have nothing left to lose. And when a woman has nothing left to lose, she becomes dangerous." Meanwhile, night was falling in Miami Beach. Jaden was stepping out of the shower when he heard Tiffany's voice on the balcony speaking on the phone. "Yeah, we did it. The old lady never even knew the money's here. Tomorrow we open the account in Nevada and we get rid of Jaden." "Yes, of course. He thinks we're in this together. Such a fool." Jaden stopped. He didn't move. He felt the water freeze on his skin. He didn't say anything. He went back to the room as if he hadn't heard a thing. He lay down next to Tiffany, who pretended to be asleep. He closed his eyes, but something had changed, and he didn't know yet that the worst was coming. Back in South Central Los Angeles, Ellie was preparing a cup of chamomile tea. Her hands still trembled a little, but not from the shock anymore. Now it was determination that made her nervous. She opened her old red notebook. For years she had written there the birthdays of her few friends, doctor's appointments, and some Bible verses that gave her strength. Now she was writing something different. A plan. The landline rang again. It was an automated message from her doctor's office reminding her of an appointment the next day. She had forgotten. The irony wasn't lost on her. While her son was spending her money in Miami, she needed to check the progress of the small tumor in her left breast. Nothing serious yet, the doctor had said 2 months ago. But they needed to monitor it. Ellie had kept the diagnosis to herself. She didn't want to worry Jaden. She thought she had time to tell him to prepare him. She had been saving precisely for that reason, in case the disease progressed and she needed treatment. She didn't want to be a burden. But now the money was gone, and with it her safety. She canceled the appointment. There was no point now. The public hospital would have to do when the time came. But first, she had to make sure her son understood what he had done. The next morning, Ellie woke up earlier than usual. She dressed with care, not in her usual faded house dress, but in a simple blue dress she kept for special occasions. She put on her mother's pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry she hadn't sold for Jaden's sake. She applied a touch of lipstick, a soft pink that made her look years younger. Walter, her elderly neighbor from across the street, was watering his lawn when she came out. "You look nice today, Ellie." "Going somewhere special?" Ellie smiled that new smile that wasn't quite her old one. "Yes, Walter. I'm going to reclaim my dignity." Walter nodded as if he understood, though he couldn't possibly know what she meant. He had been a widower for 15 years and had never remarried. Sometimes he brought Ellie vegetables from his garden. She made him pies in return. They had a silent understanding, the kind that comes from shared loneliness. At the bus stop, Ellie sat straight, her small purse on her lap. Inside was her ID, her old flip phone, and an envelope with $500, her emergency cash that she kept hidden in a cookie jar. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The bus arrived, belching diesel smoke. She got on, paid her fare, and sat near the window. As the bus pulled away, she took one last look at her neighborhood, wondering if she would ever see it again. The trip to the airport took almost an hour. Ellie had never flown before. All her life she had traveled by bus or train, and only when absolutely necessary. Flying was a luxury she couldn't afford, but today she would use her emergency money to buy a ticket to Miami. It would leave her almost nothing, but she didn't care anymore. At the airport, she approached the ticket counter with determination. "How much for a one-way ticket to Miami today?" The agent looked at her skeptically. "The cheapest we have is $320, ma'am, but that's for a flight at 9 p.m. with a layover in Atlanta." "I'll take it." Ellie said, counting out the cash. The agent seemed surprised that she was paying in small bills, but processed the ticket without comment. With the boarding pass in her hand, Ellie felt a strange sense of freedom. She had 7 hours to wait, but she didn't mind. She found a seat in the waiting area and took out her red notebook. She continued working on her plan, adding details, considering scenarios. She wasn't acting out of impulse. Every step was carefully thought out. A young family sat across from her, a mother, a father, and a little boy about 4 years old. The child was fussy tired from waiting. His mother tried to calm him with promises of adventure. His father showed him planes through the window. Ellie watched them with a mixture of nostalgia and pain. She had been a single mother. There had been no one to help her entertain Jaden during long waits, no one to share the burden of raising a child. She had done it all alone, and she had thought she had done it well. But now she wondered if she had failed somewhere along the way. In Miami, Jaden was having breakfast on the hotel terrace. The morning was clear, the ocean a perfect blue, but he couldn't enjoy it. Tiffany's words from the night before kept replaying in his mind. Get rid of Jaden. Such a fool. He looked at her across the table, laughing with her mother about something on her phone. She was beautiful with her long dark hair and flawless skin. He had fallen for her hard and fast when they met at a friend's party 3 years ago. She had seemed impressed by his job in finance, by his ambition. She had made him feel important, capable a man of the world. Something his mother, with her simple ways and cautious approach to life, had never done. But now he wondered if it had all been an act, if she had targeted him from the beginning for his potential access to money. Not his own money. He didn't have much, despite his good job. He spent too freely trying to keep up with Tiffany's expectations. But his mother's money, the savings he knew she had been accumulating for decades. He had told Tiffany about it once in a moment of vulnerability when they were discussing their future. She had listened with unusual attention as he explained that his mother, despite her humble job, had managed to save a substantial amount over the years. She never spent on herself, he had said somewhat proudly. Everything was for me, for my future. After that, Tiffany had started to suggest that his mother was holding him back, that the money sitting in her account was actually meant for him for their life together, that Ellie was being selfish by not sharing it now when they could use it to start a business, to travel, to live the life they deserved. Little by little, she had planted the seed in his mind, watered it with constant remarks about his mother's outdated views, and watched it grow into a poisonous plant of resentment. When Tiffany finally suggested that he use the online banking details he knew he had helped his mother set up the account years ago to transfer the money to himself, it had seemed almost reasonable. Not right, but justifiable in some twisted way. His mother was old. She didn't need much. And wasn't the money meant for him anyway? Wasn't that why she had saved it? But now, looking at Tiffany's smug face as she sipped her mimosa, he felt a crushing weight of guilt. What had he done? How could he have betrayed the woman who had given him everything? And for what? For a wife who was planning to leave him? Rhonda's voice interrupted his thoughts. So Jaden, what are we doing today? Shopping on Lincoln Road, maybe some jet skiing. Her voice was sickeningly sweet, but her eyes were cold, calculating. He had always felt uncomfortable around her, but had tried to be a good son-in-law for Tiffany's sake. Now he wondered if mother and daughter were in this together, if they had planned it all from the beginning. I'm not feeling well, he said, pushing his plate away. I think I'll stay in the room today. You two go ahead. Tiffany frowned. But honey, we're in Miami. You can't just stay in the room. What's wrong? Just a headache, he lied. Please go enjoy yourselves. They didn't need much convincing. Within minutes, they were gone off to spend more of his mother's money. Jaden went back to the room and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. What could he do now? Confront Tiffany. She would deny everything. Go to the police and say that he had stolen his mother's money, and now his wife was planning to steal it from him. He would end up in jail. There was only one solution he had: to call his mother. He had to confess, apologize, beg for forgiveness. But every time he reached for the phone, shame stopped him. How could he face her after what he had done? What could he possibly say to make it right? In Los Angeles, the hours crawled by as Ellie waited for her flight. She used the time to gather her strength to steel herself for what was coming. She wasn't going to Miami to make a scene or to beg for her money back. She was going to show her son the consequences of his actions. She was going to make him see what he had destroyed. She thought about the neighbors who had helped her over the years. Walter with his vegetables, Brenda with her friendship, the young couple next door, who sometimes helped her with heavy lifting. They were her community, her support system. Jaden had grown up surrounded by these people, by their kindness. How had he forgotten? How had he become someone who could steal from his own mother? The flight was called, and Ellie joined the line of passengers. She had never been on a plane before, and the process was confusing. A kind younger woman helped her find her seat and stow her small bag. The takeoff terrified her. The roar of the engines, the pressure in her ears, the sickening sensation of leaving the ground. But once they were in the air, a strange calm came over her. She looked out the window at the city lights below, then at the darkness that swallowed them as they flew over emptier lands. Somewhere down there was her home, the life she had built. But up here, she was untethered, free to become someone new. The layover in Atlanta was brief. She barely had time to use the restroom and find her next gate before boarding began. The second flight was shorter, and Ellie was too tired to be afraid. She dozed off, waking only when the announcement came that they were beginning their descent into Miami. It was past midnight when the plane landed. The airport was quieter but still buzzing with activity. Ellie followed the signs to ground transportation. She had no hotel reservation. She hadn't thought that far ahead. But she had read in her magazine about budget motels near the airport. She would find one for the night, and tomorrow she would locate Jaden. The motel was dingy but clean. The clerk looked suspicious when she paid in cash but gave her a room on the ground floor. It was a far cry from wherever Jaden was staying, probably some luxury hotel on the beach with room service and a view of the ocean. But it would do. Ellie took a quick shower, washing away the grime of travel, then sat on the edge of the bed in her nightgown. She opened her red notebook and reviewed her plan one last time before turning out the light. In his lavish hotel suite, Jaden couldn't sleep. He had spent the day avoiding Tiffany and Rhonda, claiming his headache had worsened. They had gone shopping without him returning with bags from expensive boutiques. They had shown him their purchases with excited exclamations, not noticing or not caring about his silence. Now in the dark, with Tiffany sleeping beside him, he felt more alone than he ever had. He thought about his mother in her small house in South Central. Was she crying? Had she called the police? Did she hate him? The thought of her hating him was unbearable, yet he knew he deserved it. He had betrayed her in the worst possible way. He slipped out of bed and went to the balcony. The night was warm, the ocean a vast darkness beyond the lights of the boardwalk. He took out his phone and scrolled to his mother's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. But what would he say? "Sorry I stole your life savings. Sorry I left you with nothing for your medical bills. Sorry I valued my wife's happiness over your survival." He put the phone away without calling. He was a coward, and he knew it. But tomorrow, he promised himself tomorrow he would find a way to make it right. Morning in Miami was blindingly bright. Ellie woke early, disoriented for a moment, before remembering where she was and why. She dressed carefully in her blue dress, reapplied her lipstick, and put on her pearl necklace. She looked at herself in the mirror. An elderly woman with silver hair and lines of hardship etched into her face, but with eyes that burned with purpose. She took a bus to South Beach. She didn't know exactly where Jaden was staying, but she knew he would be somewhere on the main strip. The expensive hotels lined the oceanfront like jewels in a necklace. She would check them one by one if she had to. The first hotel she tried was the Ritz-Carlton. She approached the reception desk with confidence. "I'm looking for my son Jaden Rosewood. He's staying here with his wife." The receptionist tapped on her computer. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have a guest by that name." Ellie nodded and left. She tried the Setai next, then the W, then the Fontainebleau. At each one, the answer was the same. By midday, she was tired and hungry, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to waste time or money on lunch. Finally, at the Delano, the receptionist hesitated after checking the system. "We do have a Rosewood party, ma'am, but I'm not authorized to give out room numbers. Would you like me to call the room?" "Yes, please," Ellie said, her heart pounding. "But don't mention me. Just ask for Mr. Rosewood." The receptionist made the call. After a moment, she hung up. "I'm sorry there's no answer. Would you like to leave a message?" "No, thank you," Ellie said. "I'll come back later." She left the hotel but didn't go far. She found a bench across the street with a view of the entrance. She would wait. Sooner or later, Jaden would come out and she would be there. Hours passed. The Miami heat was intense, and Ellie was beginning to feel faint. She hadn't eaten since the small breakfast at the motel, and she had been walking all day. But she refused to leave her post. As the afternoon wore on, she saw many well-dressed people coming and going from the hotel, but not her son. Then, just as the sun was beginning to lower, she saw them. Jaden, Tiffany, and Rhonda stepping out of the hotel. They were dressed for dinner, Tiffany in a tight red dress that seemed too revealing to Ellie's eyes, Rhonda in something equally flashy, and Jaden in a light-colored suit. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment while the valet brought their car, a sleek convertible that must have been a rental. Ellie watched as they got in, Jaden at the wheel, the women on either side of him like ornaments. They pulled away into the Miami traffic, unaware of the eyes following them. Ellie stood up, her decision made. She would not confront him here, not with them present. She needed to catch him alone. She went to a small cafe and ordered a coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu. She used the last of her strength to think clearly. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would go to the hotel early and wait for a moment when Jaden was alone. She had come too far to give up now. That night in her cheap motel room, Ellie felt a sharp pain in her breast where the tumor was. She had been pushing herself too hard and her body was protesting. She took a couple of over-the-counter pain pills she had brought with her and lay down, willing the pain to subside. She couldn't afford to be weak now. She needed all her strength for what was coming. In the luxurious Ocean View restaurant where they were dining, Jaden was silent as Tiffany and Rhonda chatted excitedly about the celebrities they thought they had spotted that day. The food was exquisite, the wine expensive, but he couldn't enjoy any of it. All he could think about was his mother and what he had done to her. Tiffany noticed his mood. "What's wrong with you today? You've been acting weird since yesterday." "Nothing," he said, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." Rhonda laughed. "Tired in Miami. You should be living it up, boy. After all, you only live once." Her words stung. You only live once. Was that his justification for stealing from his mother? For betraying the woman who had given up everything for him? The sick feeling in his stomach intensified. When they returned to the hotel, Tiffany suggested they go to the bar for a nightcap. Jaden begged off, claiming his headache had returned. He went up to the room alone, relieved to have a moment of solitude. Once alone, he took out his phone again and looked at his mother's number. This time he pressed call. It rang and rang, but there was no answer. Finally, her voicemail picked up. "Mom?" He started, then stopped. What could he say? He hung up without leaving a message. He went to the balcony and looked out at the ocean. The moon reflected on the water, creating a silver path that seemed to lead to infinity. He had never felt so lost. Early the next morning, Ellie was back at the Delano. She found a seat in the lobby, pretending to be waiting for someone. Her pain had subsided somewhat, but she was weak from lack of proper food and rest. Still, her determination hadn't wavered. She watched the elevators, the restaurant entrance, the front doors, alert for any sign of Jaden. Hours passed. She saw Tiffany and Rhonda leave the hotel in beach attire, laughing and talking loudly. But there was no sign of Jaden. Had he gone out earlier? Was he still in the room? She continued to wait. It was almost noon when she finally saw him. He came out of the elevator alone, dressed casually in shorts and a t-shirt. He looked tired, his face drawn, his shoulders slumped. He didn't notice her as he crossed the lobby towards the exit. Ellie stood up and followed him. Outside, Jaden walked along the boardwalk, hands in pockets, gaze fixed on the ground. Ellie kept a distance, watching him. He looked so much like the boy she had raised, yet so different. Wealth had changed him, or rather the pursuit of wealth had. The simple joy he had once found in small things seemed to have been replaced by an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. He stopped at a bench facing the ocean and sat down. Ellie approached slowly, her heart hammering in her chest. When she was just a few feet away, she spoke his name. Jaden. He turned, and for a moment he didn't seem to recognize her. Then his eyes widened in shock. "Mom!" "What are you doing here?" Ellie didn't answer immediately. She sat down beside him, her eyes on the ocean. "It's beautiful, isn't it? I've never seen the ocean before. Never had the time or the money." Jaden stared at her, his face a mixture of guilt and fear. "Mom, I can explain." Ellie turned to him, her gaze steady. "No, Jaden, you can't explain. There is no explanation for what you did. You took everything I had. Everything." Her voice was calm, devoid of the anger he had expected. Somehow that was worse. He would have preferred her to shout, to hit him, to show some emotion. This quiet dignity was unbearable. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though the words seemed woefully inadequate. "Sorry doesn't pay my medical bills, Jaden. Sorry doesn't buy my medication. Sorry doesn't keep a roof over my head. Medical bills, medication. What are you talking about? Ellie laughed a hollow sound. Of course you didn't know. Why would you? You never ask about my life. I have breast cancer, Jaden. Early stages, but it needs treatment. That's what the money was for, my safety net. The color drained from Jaden's face. No, you never said. I didn't know. Would it have made a difference? Would you have hesitated to take the money if you had known it was for my cancer treatment? Or would you have justified it, somehow told yourself I was old, that I was going to die anyway, that you deserved it more than I did? Her words cut deep because they were true. Hadn't Tiffany said almost exactly that? She's going to kick the bucket soon anyway, and he had said nothing had let it pass, had even raised his glass in silent agreement. I can give it back, he said desperately. I'll transfer it back today. Ellie shook her head. It's too late. Tiffany and her mother have already spent a good chunk of it, haven't they? On clothes and jewelry and fancy dinners. And even if you gave back what's left, it wouldn't change what you did. It wouldn't restore my faith in you. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I'll take care of you. Pay for your treatment, everything. Ellie looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not the man he was, but the boy he had been. Her little boy who had once promised to buy her a big house when he grew up, who had made her Mother's Day cards with crayon and construction paper, who had cried when she was sick and couldn't get out of bed. Where had that boy gone? Do you know what hurts the most, Jaden? It's not the money. It's that you thought so little of me, of everything I sacrificed for you. I went hungry so you could eat. I wore the same clothes for years so you could have new ones. I worked myself to the bone so you could have opportunities I never had. And this is how you repay me. Mom, please. His eyes filled with tears, but Ellie was unmoved. Tell me, does Tiffany know you're here with me now? No, she and her mother went to the beach. They don't know. And they don't know that I know about the money, do they? You haven't told them I called you? Jaden looked confused. You didn't call me. Ellie smiled that new strange smile. No, I didn't. But you just told me something very interesting. You were expecting me to call. You were waiting for it, dreading it. Your guilty conscience at work. She stood up, adjusting her pearl necklace. I'm going back to Los Angeles tonight, Jaden. I don't know what I'll do without the money, how I'll pay for treatment, how I'll survive. But I'll find a way. I always have. And you'll have to live with what you've done. That's my retribution. She turned to walk away, but Jaden grabbed her arm. Mom, wait, don't go like this. Let me help you. Let me make it right. Ellie gently removed his hand. You can't make this right, Jaden. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. But I will give you one piece of advice. Watch Tiffany and her mother carefully. They're not what they seem. What do you mean you'll find out soon enough? Goodbye, son. She walked away, leaving Jaden on the bench, stunned and broken. She had said what she came to say, had looked him in the eye as she did it. That was all she had wanted, to make him face what he had done, to make him understand the depth of his betrayal. The rest would unfold on its own. As she walked back towards the bus stop, Ellie felt a strange lightness. She had lost everything, yet somehow she felt free. Free of expectations, of hope, of the illusion that she meant anything to her son. It was a painful freedom, but freedom nonetheless. Back at the hotel, Jaden sat on the edge of the bed, head in hands. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Cancer, treatment, survival. He had stolen from her not just money, but the chance to live. And her last warning, watch Tiffany and her mother carefully. What had she meant? He got up and began to search the room, looking for... He wasn't sure what. Evidence proof that Tiffany was planning to leave him. He found nothing in the main room. Then he checked her purse, which she had left behind when they went to the beach. Inside was a small notebook. He opened it, his hands shaking. Written in Tiffany's neat handwriting was a list of bank accounts. His accounts, his mother's account, and several others he didn't recognize. Next to his mother's account was a check mark, and the note transferred to JR 215. Next to his name was another note, transfer to NV account scheduled 218. Tomorrow. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Tiffany was planning to transfer the money out of his account tomorrow to some account in Nevada that he knew nothing about. And then what? Disappear with her mother, leaving him behind, just as his mother had warned. He sat there staring at the notebook as the full horror of his situation became clear. He had betrayed the one person who truly loved him for someone who saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone to wealth. He had thrown away his mother's love and trust for a woman who was planning to betray him in exactly the same way. The door opened and Tiffany and Rhonda came in laughing and talking. They stopped when they saw him with the notebook. "What are you doing with my things?" Tiffany demanded, her voice suddenly cold. Jaden looked up at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. "What am I doing? I'm discovering what a fool I've been. I'm learning that my mother was right about you all along." "Your mother? What does she have to do with anything? She's here in Miami. She came to find me, to tell me she has cancer and that the money I stole from her was for her treatment." Tiffany's face showed no sympathy, only calculation. "So what does that matter now? The money is ours. We've earned it. Earned it by lying to me, by planning to leave me once you've transferred it all to your secret account in Nevada." Tiffany's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're being paranoid. There's no secret account. Don't lie to me. It's all here in your notebook. The transfer scheduled for tomorrow. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was that stupid?" "Yes, actually I did," Tiffany spat, dropping the pretense. "I thought you were so desperate for my approval, so hungry for the lifestyle I showed you that you'd do anything, believe anything. And I was right. You stole from your own mother for me. What kind of man does that?" The words hit Jaden like physical blows. She was right. What kind of man did that? Not the man his mother had raised him to be, not the man he had thought he was. "Get out," he said quietly. "Both of you, take your things and get out." Tiffany laughed. "And leave the money behind. I don't think so. You're going to transfer it to me as planned, and then we'll go." "No, I'm not. I'm going to try to fix what I've done. I'm going to give it back to my mother, what's left of it anyway." Tiffany's face contorted with anger. "You think it's that easy? You think you can just change your mind and everything will be okay? Your precious mother will forgive you. Welcome you back with open arms after what you did to her. She hates you, Jaden. She'll never forgive you." The truth of her words stabbed at him. His mother probably did hate him. She had every right to, but that didn't change what he had to do. "I don't care if she forgives me or not. I have to try to make it right. Now get out or I'll call security." Tiffany looked at him with contempt. "You're pathetic. You've always been pathetic. I never loved you. I just saw an opportunity and took it. Goodbye, Jaden. Enjoy your guilt." She grabbed her purse and motioned to her mother. They swept out of the room, leaving Jaden alone with the wreckage of his life. He pulled out his phone and dialed the hotel where his mother had mentioned she was staying. "Please connect me to Eleanor Rosewood's room." "What, she checked out? Did she leave a forwarding address or number?" "I see. Thank you." She was gone. Back to Los Angeles, just as she had said. He had no way to reach her, no way to apologize again, no way to tell her he was going to try to make it right. All he could do was follow through on his promise. He opened his banking app and initiated a transfer back to his mother's account. Not all of the money was there. Tiffany and Rhonda had indeed spent a good portion on their shopping sprees and expensive meals. But he sent back what he could, about $120,000. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. Then he booked a flight back to Los Angeles for that evening. He would go to his mother's house, beg for forgiveness in person, offer to help in any way he could. He didn't expect her to welcome him with open arms, as Tiffany had mockingly suggested. He knew the damage he had done might be irreparable, but he had to try. He owed her that much. On the plane, Jaden thought about his mother's words on the bench. "I'll find a way. I always have." She was stronger than he had ever given her credit for. She had raised him alone, had overcome countless obstacles, had built a life for herself and for him through sheer determination and hard work. She would survive this too, with or without his help. But he hoped she would let him be part of her life again, if only to make amends. As the plane descended towards Los Angeles, Jaden made a silent promise to be the son she deserved, to never again forget the sacrifices she had made for him, to honor her in every decision he made from this day forward. Whether she forgave him or not, whether she ever trusted him again or not, he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of her love. The arrival back to Los Angeles felt surreal to Jaden, as if he were sleepwalking through a nightmare of his own creation. The airport bustled around him, families reuniting, business travelers rushing to taxis, but he moved like a ghost, invisible and untethered. No one waited for him. No one would welcome him home. He had burned that bridge with his own hands and watched it turn to ash. Night had fallen over the city, the lights blinking like judgmental eyes. He took a rideshare to his mother's neighborhood in South Central, his heart pounding harder with each passing mile. What would he say? How could any words repair what he had destroyed? The money he'd transferred back was just currency. It couldn't buy back trust or erase betrayal. The car pulled up to the familiar street corner. Jaden paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk staring down the block at his mother's small house. Lights glowed in the windows. She was home. He took a step forward, then stopped. What right did he have to appear at her door to disrupt whatever peace she might have found after his betrayal? He retreated to the corner, finding a bench beneath a streetlight. He would wait until morning, give himself the night to find courage to prepare words that might begin to express his remorse. He sat in the gathering chill, watching occasional cars pass, feeling the weight of his actions settle more heavily with each hour. Dawn broke over South Central, painting the tired buildings with golden light, a beauty that made Jaden's chest ache. He had grown up here, played on these streets, complained about this neighborhood. Now it felt like a place he no longer deserved to claim as home. He rose stiffly from the bench, his body protesting the night spent in the cold, and walked slowly toward his mother's house. The small front yard was neat as always. Ellie never let standards slip, no matter how little she had. Jaden paused at the gate, his hand trembling on the latch. Movement caught his eye. Through the window he could see his mother moving slowly in the kitchen, preparing her morning tea. The familiar ritual nearly broke him. How many mornings had he taken this for granted? Gathering what courage he could find, he opened the gate and walked to the door. His knock sounded hollow, inadequate. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the door opened, and there she was. Ellie looked at her son without surprise, as if she had been expecting him. She wore a simple house dress, her gray hair pulled back neatly, her pearl necklace at her throat. But she looked smaller, somehow more fragile, the betrayal having taken a physical toll. "I transferred back the money, Mom. Not all of it, Tiffany spent some, but most. And I'll get the rest, I swear. I'll pay for your treatments. I'll make this right." Ellie regarded him with eyes that had seen too much disappointment. "You can't make this right, Jaden. Some things once broken stay broken. The money isn't the point." She stepped back, not inviting him in, but not closing the door either. It was a limbo he deserved. "I saw the doctor yesterday. The cancer has progressed. It's stage 2 now. They want to start treatment next week." Her words hit him like physical blows. Each syllable a punishment, each diagnosis a consequence of his actions. If he hadn't taken the money, would she have gone to the doctor sooner? Would the cancer still be at stage 1? "Mom, please, let me help. Let me be here for you." Ellie shook her head, a small, tired movement. "You chose not to be here for me when I needed you most. You can't decide to be a son only when it's convenient. That's not how family works." The word family hung between them, a concept he had discarded so easily when blinded by Tiffany's manipulations. "What happened with Tiffany?" Ellie asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Jaden looked down, shame burning his face. "You were right. She was planning to take the money and leave. She and her mother. I found evidence confronted her. She's gone now." Ellie nodded, no satisfaction in her expression. Just the weary acknowledgement of a prediction fulfilled. "I know what it's like to be left, Jaden. Your father taught me that lesson, but I never used that pain as an excuse to harm others." The comparison to his absent father stung worse than any insult she could have hurled. His father who had abandoned them when Jaden was just a boy. The man whose desertion had shaped his childhood, created the void Ellie had worked so hard to fill. And how had he repaid her? By becoming the very thing she had protected him from. "I'm not like him, Mom. I made a terrible mistake. But I'm here now. I want to make amends." Ellie's gaze softened slightly, not with forgiveness, but with a mother's eternal hope that her child might yet find his way. "Go home, Jaden. Think about what you've done, not just to me, but to yourself. Who have you become? Is this the man I raised you to be?" She closed the door gently but firmly, leaving him on the porch with questions that had no easy answers. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the finality of that soft click of the latch. Then he turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last. Back at his condo in Studio City, everything looked different, as if his betrayal had physically altered his surroundings. The expensive furniture, Tiffany had insisted on the modernist art she'd selected, the sleek kitchen they rarely used because they ate out so often, all of it seemed hollow, now devoid of meaning. These weren't the trappings of success, but the evidence of his moral failure. He tried calling Tiffany, not because he wanted reconciliation, but because he needed closure. The number was disconnected. He checked their joint bank account, empty. She had taken what little remained and vanished. A social media search showed she had already scrubbed her accounts of any photos with him. It was as if their relationship had never existed. The doorman who had turned his mother away buzzed his intercom. "There's a woman here to see you, Mr. Rosewood. A Miss Carla Winston." Jaden frowned. He didn't know anyone by that name. "Send her up," he told the doorman, curiosity temporarily overriding his misery. Minutes later, a knock at his door revealed a middle-aged woman in a business suit, her expression professionally neutral. "Jaden Arthur Rosewood. I'm Carla Winston, private investigator. Your mother hired me 2 days ago." Jaden stepped back, motioning her inside with numb surprise. His mother had hired a private investigator, the quiet, frugal woman who saved every penny. The timeline made no sense. Carla sat on his sofa without waiting for an invitation, placing a folder on the coffee table. "Your mother contacted me before she left for Miami. She suspected her daughter-in-law was involved in similar schemes before. She asked me to look into Tiffany's background while she confronted you." The revelation struck Jaden with fresh pain. His mother hadn't gone to Miami on impulse. She had planned prepared, gathered resources despite her limited means. While he had been stealing from her, she had been 2 steps ahead, anticipating the betrayal not just from him, but from Tiffany as well. Carla opened the folder, revealing documents, photographs, printouts. "I found quite a lot in a short time. Your wife, or should I say Angela Roberts, that's her real name, has done this before. 3 times that I could trace." She spread out photos of Tiffany Angela with different men, documents showing name changes, newspaper clippings about fraud investigations that never led to charges. Her pattern is consistent. She finds men with access to family money, manipulates them into taking it, then disappears with the cash. Her mother is her accomplice. They're very good at covering their tracks, but they've slipped up this time. Your mother's evidence and mine together would be enough for criminal charges. Jaden stared at the evidence of Tiffany's deception, a strange calm settling over him. He had been a mark, nothing more. A target selected for his vulnerability, his access to his mother's savings. "I don't want to press charges," he said finally. "I just want to fix what I've done." Carla shrugged, gathering her documents. "That's between you and your mother. My job was to get the information. What you do with it is your business." She handed him her card before leaving. "Your mother paid my full fee in advance, every penny she could scrape together. Think about that." The door closed behind her, leaving Jaden alone with the weight of this new knowledge. His mother, diagnosed with cancer, facing the theft of her life savings, had still found the resources to protect him from further harm, had still tried to save him from his own terrible choices. The depth of her love, even in the face of his betrayal, was a judgment more severe than any anger could have been. He spent the night sitting in darkness, turning Carla's card over and over in his fingers. When morning came, he made a decision. He couldn't undo what he had done, but he could face the consequences. He could try to rebuild himself into someone worthy of his mother's sacrifices. First, he called his office. The receptionist sounded surprised to hear from him. "Mr. Matthews was looking for you," she said. "You missed the Ferguson presentation. He's not happy." "I need to speak with him," Jaden replied, already knowing what was coming. The conversation with his boss was brief and final. Unauthorized absence, missed deadlines, client complaints. Excuses weren't welcome. His position was terminated effective immediately. Personal belongings would be shipped to his address. Jaden felt strangely relieved as he hung up. The job had been another thing Tiffany had pushed him toward: high-pressure, high-status, but ultimately unsatisfying. It had fed his vanity, but starved his soul. Now without it, he faced an unfamiliar freedom, a chance to redefine himself. He spent the day liquidating what he could. The expensive watch Tiffany had insisted he needed. The collector whiskeys he'd bought to impress her friends. The designer clothes that had never felt like him. Each sale was a small unburdening, a step away from the man he had allowed himself to become. By evening, he had gathered enough to make another transfer to his mother's account. Not a huge amount, but a start. He included a simple message with the transfer: "For your treatment. More to come." The next morning, he packed a small bag with essentials and left the condo keys with the doorman. "I won't be coming back," he explained. "The rent is paid through the end of the month. After that, the management company can do what they want with what's left." He took a bus to South Central, the unfamiliar mode of transportation, a humbling reminder of privileges he had taken for granted. When he arrived at his mother's street, he didn't approach her house. Instead, he went to Walter's place across the road. The elderly man was in his garden tending roses that bloomed despite the neighborhood's challenges. He looked up as Jaden approached, recognition and wariness crossing his weathered face. Jaden's throat tightened with shame. "I know what I did, Mr. Walter. I know you probably hate me for it. But I'm trying to make it right. I want to help my mother, but she won't let me near her. Can you tell me how she's really doing?" Walter studied him for a long moment, his gaze penetrating and wise. "Your mother is the strongest woman I know, but even the strong have their limits. The cancer treatments are hard. She's tired all the time, can barely keep food down some days." Each word was a knife twisting in Jaden's heart. "Is she going to the hospital alone?" Walter nodded, his disapproval clear. "Brenda goes when she can, but she has her own health problems. Your mother takes the bus, sits there for hours getting poison pumped into her veins, then takes the bus home again. Too proud to ask for more help, too kind to make anyone feel obligated." The image of his mother, weak from treatment, navigating public transportation alone, was unbearable. "I want to drive her. Take care of her. She won't even open the door to me." Walter turned back to his roses, his voice matter of fact. "Then make yourself useful somewhere she can see you. Actions speak louder than apologies." The simple wisdom struck Jaden like a revelation. He thanked Walter and walked away, a plan forming in his mind. The next morning he found a small motel within walking distance of his mother's house. The room was basic, a far cry from his luxury condo, but it was clean and affordable. He paid for a week in advance. Then he walked to the local diner, the one his mother sometimes visited for Sunday breakfast. The owner, Mrs. Jenkins, recognized him immediately, her expression cooling. Jaden stood straight, accepting the silent judgment. "I'm looking for work, Mrs. Jenkins. Anything you have. Washing dishes, cleaning floors. I just need a chance." Mrs. Jenkins raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "Word gets around in this neighborhood, Jaden Rosewood. I know what you did to your mama. Why should I help you?" Jaden didn't flinch from the direct challenge. "You shouldn't. I don't deserve it. But I'm trying to make things right, and I need to start somewhere. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired." Mrs. Jenkins considered him for a long moment, then nodded toward the back. "Kitchen needs cleaning. Top to bottom. Do a good job, and we'll talk about tomorrow." For the next 8 hours, Jaden scrubbed grease from surfaces that hadn't seen a deep clean in years. His hands, soft from office work, blistered and cracked. His back, unused to physical labor, screamed in protest. But he didn't stop, didn't complain. Each painful moment was a small atonement. At the end of the day, Mrs. Jenkins inspected his work with a critical eye. "Not bad for a first try," she conceded. "Be here at 5 a.m. tomorrow. We need help with breakfast prep." The pay was minimal, the work exhausting, but Jaden felt a sense of honest purpose he hadn't experienced in years. Each morning he arrived before dawn to chop vegetables, mix batter, wash endless dishes. Each evening he left with aching muscles and a small amount of cash, which he immediately converted to a money order for his mother. He slipped these under her door each night with simple notes. "For your medicine. For groceries. For whatever you need." Never asking for acknowledgement, never expecting forgiveness, just trying in his small way to ease her burden. Days passed without a word from Ellie. Jaden saw her occasionally from a distance, walking slowly to the bus stop for her treatments, returning, looking even more exhausted. He ached to approach her, to offer his help directly, but respected her need for space. Instead, he found other ways to be useful. He fixed Walter's leaking roof one weekend, helped Brenda carry her groceries, cleared trash from the vacant lot at the end of the street. Small acts of service that couldn't erase his sin, but might over time demonstrate his commitment to change. Word spread through the tight-knit community. The prodigal son was back, not asking for handouts or forgiveness, just working hard and keeping his head down. Some neighbors remained cool toward him, their loyalty to Ellie unwavering. Others offered cautious second chances, small jobs opportunities to prove himself. One evening, as Jaden was walking back to his motel after a particularly grueling day, he passed his mother's house and noticed her struggling to carry a large bag of laundry to the washing line. Before he could think better of it, he approached the fence. "Can I help with that, Mom?" Ellie looked up, startled. For a moment he thought she would refuse, send him away again. Instead, she nodded once, a minimal acknowledgement. He entered the yard for the first time since his return, taking the heavy bag from her hands. Their fingers brushed briefly, a contact that sent a jolt of emotion through him. He carried the laundry to the line and began hanging items with the careful attention he now brought to all tasks. They worked in silence for several minutes, the domestic ritual both familiar and strange. Finally, Ellie spoke. "Mrs. Jenkins says you're working for her now." Jaden nodded, not looking up from the sheet he was securing. "Yes, she gave me a chance when she didn't have to. And you're staying at the Palms Motel, room 14. He glanced at her, surprised she knew such details. "Walter told you." Ellie's mouth curved in a small, sad smile. "Everyone tells me everything. They think they're protecting me, keeping tabs on you. This neighborhood has always watched out for its own." The implication that he was still, despite everything, considered part of this community hit Jaden with unexpected force. He had grown up resenting this neighborhood, seeing only its limitations, not the invisible web of care that sustained it. "You don't have to stay in that awful motel." Ellie continued, her voice carefully neutral. "The sofa in the living room pulls out. It's not comfortable, but it's better than what you've got now." The offer hung between them, tenuous as spider silk. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a tentative bridge across the chasm he had created. "I'd like that, Mom." "Thank you." She nodded once, then turned to go inside, her movements painfully slow. Jaden finished hanging the laundry, each piece smoothed with meticulous care, before following her into the house of his childhood. The living room was exactly as he remembered, yet different. The furniture seemed smaller, the walls closer. Or perhaps it was he who had changed, grown too big for his origins, then shrunk back down to size through humility. Ellie moved to the kitchen without a word, putting on the kettle for tea. The familiar domestic sound nearly broke him. "I have treatment again tomorrow," she said, her back to him as she reached for cups. "The bus schedule changed. It comes earlier now." Jaden understood the unspoken request. "I can drive you, Mom. I'll call Mrs. Jenkins, change my shift." Ellie turned, fixing him with a penetrating gaze. "Every choice has consequences, Jaden. Are you sure you want to risk your job?" The question was about more than tomorrow's schedule. It was about priorities, about the man he was choosing to become. "Some things are more important than a job, Mom. You taught me that, even if I forgot for a while." She nodded, satisfied with his answer. "Be ready at 7:30 then. The treatments take 4 hours. You'll need to bring something to do." Jaden nodded, accepting her terms. "I'll be ready." That night on the lumpy pull-out sofa that was still more comfortable than his motel bed, Jaden lay awake, listening to the familiar sounds of the house. The hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing outside, the creaking of old pipes, sounds of his childhood that he had once been so eager to escape. He thought of Tiffany, wondering where she was now, whether she was already setting up her next mark. The anger he expected to feel didn't materialize. Instead, he found a strange gratitude. Without her betrayal, he might never have recognized his own, might never have found his way back to this house, to the chance at redemption he didn't deserve, but desperately wanted. Morning brought new tests. Ellie emerged from her bedroom looking pale and drawn, the effort of preparing for another day of treatment evident in every movement. Jaden had already made coffee and toast, setting the table as he remembered she preferred. She ate little, pushing the food around her plate more than consuming it. "The treatments affect my appetite," she explained, seeing his concern. "Everything tastes like metal now." Jaden nodded, adding this new knowledge to the growing list of his mother's sufferings. "Is there anything that does taste good? Anything you can keep down?" Ellie considered the question. "Sometimes popsicles, the purple ones, and those vanilla pudding cups." He made a mental note to buy both to stock the refrigerator with options that might tempt her fading appetite. The drive to the hospital was quiet, the morning traffic crawling through Los Angeles streets. Jaden navigated carefully, hyper-aware of his precious cargo. Beside him, Ellie sat straight-backed and dignified, her pearl necklace in place, despite her casual clothes, a small defiance against the indignities of illness. At the hospital, he helped her check in, then followed her to the oncology floor. The nurses greeted Ellie by name, their smiles warm but eyes assessing as they noticed Jaden. "This is my son Ellie," explained her tone, giving nothing away. "He's driving me today." The head nurse, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes, gave Jaden an appraising look. "It's about time someone did. She's been coming alone too long." The gentle admonishment stung, but he accepted it as his due. "I'll be here from now on," he promised, meeting the nurse's gaze steadily. She nodded, apparently satisfied, and led Ellie to a reclining chair among a row of similar seats, each occupied by patients in various stages of treatment. Jaden's heart clenched at the sight so much suffering gathered in one room, his mother now among them. The nurse efficiently hooked up the IV, explaining the medication routine to Jaden as she worked. You'll want to watch for these side effects, she instructed. Nausea is common. Fatigue, too. She might spike a fever tonight. If it goes above 101, bring her to emergency right away. The responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but he welcomed it. For too long, he had shed obligations, pursued only what pleased him. Now each duty was a step back toward the man his mother had raised him to be. Ellie closed her eyes as the medication began to flow, her face tight with discomfort. Jaden sat beside her, not speaking, just present. After a while, she opened her eyes again. There's a notebook in my purse, she said, and a pen. I need to write something. Jaden retrieved the items, a small red notebook worn at the edges and a blue ballpoint pen. Ellie took them with a nod of thanks, opening to a blank page. Her handwriting was shaky but determined as she began to write. It's for you, she said, not looking up. For when I'm gone. Things you should know. Jaden's heart contracted painfully. Mom, don't talk like that. You're going to beat this. The treatments will work. Ellie looked up, then her gaze direct and unflinching. I'm not afraid of dying, Jaden. I'm afraid of leaving things unsaid, unfinished. She returned to her writing, and Jaden fell silent, watching her hands move across the page. Whatever she needed to tell him, he would honor it, even if it was painful to hear. The treatment dragged on, hour after slow hour. Jaden fetched water-adjusted pillows, made himself useful in small ways. Around them, other patients dozed or chatted quietly with their caregivers, a community of the suffering and those who loved them. When the IV was finally removed, Ellie looked exhausted, her skin gray, her movements unsteady. Jaden helped her to the car, supporting her weight as unobtrusively as possible, preserving her dignity. The drive home was silent. Ellie, too, drained for conversation. Jaden kept glancing over, monitoring her condition, anxiety gnawing at him. Was this normal? Was she in pain? The nurse had prepared him for side effects, but experiencing them secondhand was still alarming. At home, he helped her to bed, bringing water and medication to her nightstand. She allowed his assistance with grudging grace, still maintaining boundaries even in her weakness. I'll be right outside if you need anything, Mom. Just call. She nodded, already half asleep. The notebook, she murmured. Keep writing in it for me, while I rest. Jaden took the red notebook from her nightstand, a sacred trust. I will, Mom. I promise. He retreated to the living room, opening the notebook carefully. The pages were filled with Ellie's handwriting, appointments, reminders, brief observations about her day. Toward the back, he found what she had been writing in the hospital. A letter to him. My son, it began when you were born. The doctor placed you in my arms, and I knew I would die for you without hesitation. That's the contract mothers make with the universe. We give our children everything, our bodies, our time, our dreams, knowing they must eventually leave us. It is the natural order of things, but there is a difference between leaving and betraying, between growing beyond us and forgetting us. You confuse these things, and that is perhaps my failure as much as yours. I gave you roots, but failed to give you wings that would carry you back home. Jaden's vision blurred with tears as he read his mother's words. Her wisdom, her insight, her ability to see his actions with clarity, yet without hatred, it was a generosity he had done nothing to earn. He turned the page, but the letter ended there, interrupted by her fatigue. He picked up the pen, turning it over in his fingers. She had asked him to continue writing. Not to finish her letter, surely those were her words, her wisdom. But perhaps to respond, to acknowledge her truth, and offer his own. He began to write, his hand unsteady with emotion. Mom, I have no right to ask your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I ask anyway, not because I deserve it, but because I cannot bear to live without it. Without you. I took everything you gave me, your sacrifices, your love, your trust, and treated it as worthless. I cannot undo that harm, but I can spend every day trying to be worthy of the second chance you're giving me now. I can try to become the son you deserve. He wrote until his hand cramped, pouring out remorse and promises, memories, and hopes. It wasn't enough, no words could be, but it was a beginning. A thread of connection when the tapestry of their relationship had been so badly torn. In the bedroom, Ellie slept fitfully occasionally, calling out in dreams. Each time Jaden went to her offering water, or simply his presence, until she settled again. It was a long night, his vigil marked by worry and newfound purpose. Morning found them both exhausted but connected by the shared ordeal. Ellie emerged from her room looking marginally better, though still pale and moving slowly. "There's tea in the pot," Jaden told her already at the stove, preparing plain toast, the only breakfast he thought she might manage. "And I thought we could go to the pharmacy later, get your prescription refilled." Ellie nodded, accepting his assistance without comment. She noticed the red notebook on the table open to the pages where he had written. Taking it, she began to read his response to her unfinished letter. Jaden watched nervously as her eyes moved across the page, absorbing his written confession, his plea for another chance. When she finished, she closed the notebook, gently placing her hand on the worn cover as if it contained something precious. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Jaden," she said finally. "It's something you receive even when you don't deserve it. That's what makes it grace." The words washed over him like a benediction, not erasing his sin but offering a path forward. A way to live with what he had done without being forever defined by it. "I meant what I wrote, Mom. Every word." Ellie nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "I know you did. That's why I'm still here, still fighting. Not just for myself, but for who you might yet become." In that moment, sitting at the kitchen table with the morning sun streaming through windows that needed washing, surrounded by furniture that had seen better days, Jaden felt something he had chased but never found in his pursuit of status and wealth. He felt at home, not just in this house, but in himself, in the truth of who he was and who he was trying to be. The journey ahead would be difficult. His mother's cancer was serious, her treatment grueling. His own path to redemption would be long and uncertain. But for the first time since his betrayal, he felt a fragile hope taking root. Not that everything would be magically fixed, but that healing, real honest healing was possible. Ellie reached across the table and took his hand, her grip weak but determined. Together, in silent understanding, they faced the day ahead and all the days to come. One step at a time, one moment of grace after another. The seasons changed in south-central summer heat, giving way to autumn's gentler warmth. Leaves on the sycamore outside Ellie's window turned golden, then fell, marking time's passage. 3 months had elapsed since Jaden's return, months of treatments, doctor visits, small victories, and painful setbacks. The routine they established became a lifeline for both. Mornings, Jaden prepared breakfast before his shift at the diner. Afternoons, he drove Ellie to treatments or sat beside her when fatigue kept her homebound. Evenings, they shared simple meals, sometimes joined by Walter or Brenda, rebuilding community bonds that Jaden had once been so eager to escape. Mrs. Jenkins promoted him to line cook after he mastered dishwashing, allowing him better hours and slightly higher pay. Every dollar beyond basic needs went to Ellie's medical expenses, a drop in the ocean of bills that kept arriving, but a concrete demonstration of his commitment. October brought news that sent ripples through their fragile equilibrium. Ellie's oncologist, Dr. Ramirez, scheduled an urgent appointment. Jaden took the morning off work, anxiety gnawing at his stomach as they waited in the sterile exam room, the antiseptic smell now too familiar. Dr. Ramirez entered with a tablet, her expression carefully neutral. "We've received your latest scan results, Mrs. Rosewood." Jaden gripped his mother's hand, feeling her fingers tighten around his. "The tumor has reduced by 30%, Ramirez continued, allowing a small smile. "The treatment is working better than we expected." Relief flooded the room, Jaden, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Ellie's face remained composed, but tears gathered in her eyes. Dr. Ramirez tempered their joy with caution. "We're not out of the woods. The cancer is responding, but it's still there. We need to continue treatment, possibly increase intensity." The drive home was quiet, both processing the news in their own way. For Jaden, it was the first unequivocally positive development since his return. For Ellie, it represented borrowed time, precious but uncertain. At home, Ellie settled into her armchair, fatigue from the morning's outing, evident in the way she eased herself down. Jaden brought her tea, then knelt beside her chair, his eyes serious. "I want to talk about something, Mom. About your bills." Ellie's expression closed a reflexive resistance to discussing finances, a legacy of decades managing scarcity alone. "I spoke with the hospital billing department," Jaden continued. "There's a patient assistance program you qualify for. It would cover about 60% of costs." Ellie's eyebrows rose skeptically. "What's the catch?" Jaden hesitated, knowing his next words might reopen barely healed wounds. "We have to disclose all household assets, including the money I took and returned. We need to be completely transparent. The request hung between them, weighted with implication. To admit the theft officially, to document it for strangers to see, it was asking Ellie to expose a private pain she'd kept dignified even at its worst. Ellie stared out the window, watching leaves skitter across the yard. "Perhaps it's time to bring things into the light," she said finally. "Truth has a cleansing quality even when it's uncomfortable." Jaden nodded, grateful beyond words. "I'll handle the paperwork. You won't have to relive it." That evening, as Ellie rested, Jaden sat at the kitchen table with forms spread before him, documenting the financial betrayal in sterile bureaucratic terms. Unauthorized transfer. Subsequently returned funds. Current financial hardship. The clinical language couldn't capture the emotional devastation, the broken trust, the ongoing journey toward healing. But perhaps it didn't need to. Those aspects lived in the quiet moments between mother and son, in small kindnesses and gradual rebuilding of connection. November arrived with unseasonably warm days. Ellie's strength improved incrementally with each treatment. The assistance program was approved, lifting a significant burden from their shoulders. Jaden expanded his work hours, saving toward a future that now seemed possible to imagine. One Saturday, Jaden came home from his morning shift to find Walter in the living room, helping Ellie sort through old photographs. The coffee table was covered with faded images: Jaden as a baby, as a gangly teenager, Ellie in her youth, strangers whose names were lost to time. Walter looked up, nodding in greeting. "Your mama's on a mission. Organizing memories." Ellie held up a particularly embarrassing school photo of 10-year-old Jaden, front teeth, missing hair sticking up stubbornly. "I'm making an album. For posterity." The word hung in the air: posterity, future, legacy. Things that had seemed uncertain months ago now cautiously embraced as possibilities. Jaden joined them, picking up a photo he'd never seen: Ellie as a young woman, perhaps 20, standing proudly in front of a small office building. "What's this one?" Ellie took it, smiling at the memory. "That was my first real job. Secretary at Harmon Detective Agency. Before you were born, before I met your father." Jaden studied the image with new eyes. His mother looked vibrant, confident, standing on the threshold of a life not yet complicated by single parenthood and financial struggle. "She's worked so hard, Mr. Walter. All these years. I never really saw it until now." Walter nodded, his weathered face solemn. "Most children don't until they've lived enough to understand sacrifice. It's the natural order. But some never learn the lesson at all." The simple truth of Walter's words resonated deeply. Jaden had been blind to his mother's humanity, seeing her only in relation to his needs, his ambitions. The photos scattered across the table told a different story of a woman with her own dreams, her own journey, who had set aside so much for his sake. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jaden opened it to find a courier holding an envelope. "Delivery for Eleanor Rosewood, signature required." Ellie signed for the mysterious package, opening it with careful fingers. Her expression transformed as she read the contents, color draining from her face. "What is it, Mom?" She handed him the document wordlessly. It was a legal notice from a law firm representing Tiffany, or Angela, her real name, claiming that the money Jaden had transferred back to Ellie was jointly owned marital property. They were demanding its return, threatening legal action. Jaden's hands shook with fury. How dare she? After what she did, Ellie's calm voice cut through his rage. "It's a bluff. She knows she can't win in court. Her history would come out. The private investigator's evidence. She's hoping we'll be scared enough to settle." Jaden stared at his mother, amazed by her clear-eyed assessment. "How can you be so calm?" Ellie's smile held a lifetime of hard-won wisdom. "Fear is a luxury I can't afford anymore, son. Cancer teaches you that quickly. What's one more fight when you're already battling for your life?" Walter stood, his expression grave. "I'll leave you two to sort this out. But Eleanor, if you need a witness to character yours or his, you know where to find me." After Walter left, Jaden and Ellie sat at the kitchen table, the threatening letter between them. "What do we do?" Ellie considered the question, her fingers absently tracing the paper's edge. "We fight, not with anger or fear, but with truth. That woman built her life on lies. Truth is the one weapon she has no defense against." Together, they crafted a response not to Tiffany directly, but to the law firm representing her. They detailed the original theft, the subsequent discovery of Tiffany's true identity and history of similar schemes, and their willingness to make all evidence public if legal action proceeded. Jaden included his own culpability without excuses, owning his role in the initial betrayal. The letter was measured, factual, and carried an unmistakable message: "We will not be intimidated." Weeks passed without response. The threat hung in the air, adding tension to days already filled with medical concerns. Jaden worried the stress would impact his mother's recovery, but Ellie seemed almost energized by the challenge approaching it, with the same quiet determination she brought to cancer treatments. December arrived with unusually cool weather. Jaden strung modest Christmas lights along the porch railings, a small festivity that brightened Ellie's smile. Inside, they set up the artificial tree that had marked holidays throughout his childhood, hanging ornaments collected over decades each with its story. "This was from your first school Christmas," Ellie said, holding up a faded paper star with Jaden's kindergarten photo glued awkwardly in its center. "You were so proud when you brought it home, insisted we put it right in front." Jaden took the ornament gently, memories flooding back the classroom smell of paste and construction paper. His teacher's encouraging smile, the importance of creating something his mother would treasure. "I'm sorry for all the Christmases I missed, Mom, when I was too busy with my important life to come home." Ellie adjusted a silver bell on a lower branch. "Those choices are part of who you were. They don't have to define who you are becoming." Her words offered absolution without dismissing accountability, a balance Jaden was learning to live within. The past couldn't be erased, but it could be integrated into a new understanding, a different way forward. The day after they decorated the tree, Ellie received a letter from Tiffany's lawyers, withdrawing their claim, citing new information that made pursuing the case inadvisable. The careful legal language translated clearly, Tiffany had realized her bluff had failed. Victory should have tasted sweeter, but Jaden felt only relief that one source of stress was eliminated from his mother's life. As Christmas approached, Ellie's treatments continued their rhythm, now woven into the fabric of daily existence. Jaden had learned to anticipate the cycle, days of increased nausea, following infusions, periods of surprising energy between moments when pain flared unexpectedly. He adapted, rearranging work hours when necessary, becoming adept at reading subtle signs in his mother's face that she would never verbalize. One evening, returning from the pharmacy with Ellie's prescriptions, Jaden found Brenda at the house looking worried. She collapsed. Brenda explained, her voice tight with concern. "Just for a second. Said she was dizzy. I helped her to bed." Jaden found his mother lying still, eyes closed but breathing steadily. Her face was ashen, the lines around her mouth deeper than usual. "Mom," her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with effort. "Just tired, honey. Very tired." Dr. Ramirez examined Ellie the next morning, her expression serious as she reviewed recent blood work. "The treatment is taking a toll," she explained. "Your white cell count is dangerously low. We need to postpone the next infusion, get you stronger first." It was their first significant setback after months of cautious progress. Jaden struggled to mask his fear as they drove home, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Ellie seemed to retreat inward, her gaze fixed on passing landscapes as if memorizing each detail. That night, unable to sleep, Jaden found her sitting in darkness at the kitchen table, the red notebook open before her. "You should be resting, Mom." Ellie looked up, moonlight from the window silvering her thin face. "I'm finishing what I started. My letter to you." Jaden sat across from her, the familiar table between them, a surface that had held thousands of meals, homework assignments, bill-paying sessions, moments of both conflict and connection throughout his life. "In case I don't have time later," Ellie continued, her pen moving steadily across the page. "Some things need to be said while there's still certainty I can say them." The calm practicality with which she approached her own mortality humbled him. "Don't talk like that. You're going to get stronger. The doctor said it's temporary." Ellie's smile was gentle but knowing. "Hope is necessary, Jaden. But so is preparation. The wise soul makes room for both." She wrote for another hour while Jaden sat in silent vigil. When she finally closed the notebook, she placed it deliberately in the center of the table. "When the time comes, you'll find everything you need to know in here. But not before then. Promise me." Jaden nodded, accepting the trust implied in her request. "I promise, Mom." The following weeks brought a roller coaster of health challenges. Ellie developed an infection that required hospitalization, 3 terrifying days of IV antibiotics and monitoring. Jaden slept in a chair beside her bed, leaving only when forced to by hospital staff or to work necessary hours at the diner. Mrs. Jenkins showed unexpected kindness, adjusting his schedule without complaint. The neighborhood rallied in quiet ways, Brenda organizing a cleaning crew for Ellie's house, Walter maintaining the small yard, others dropping off prepared meals that accumulated in the freezer. January arrived with Ellie back home, but significantly weakened. Dr. Ramirez visited the house, an unusual concession that signaled the seriousness of the situation. We have decisions to make, she told them, laying out options with compassionate directness. We can resume treatment at a reduced dose, which may slow the cancer but won't be as effective. Or we can focus on quality of life, now managing symptoms without the harsh side effects of chemo. It was the conversation Jaden had dreaded, the moment when fighting shifted to accepting, when cure became secondary to comfort. His instinct was to argue, to demand more aggressive treatment, to refuse the implicit surrender. But he bit back those reactions, recognizing this decision belonged to his mother alone. Ellie considered the options with characteristic thoughtfulness. I want a little more time, she decided finally, but not at any cost. Let's try the reduced dose. If it becomes too much, we'll stop. Dr. Ramirez nodded, respecting the balanced wisdom of Ellie's choice. I'll arrange for home health visits, she added. You shouldn't be managing this alone, Mr. Rosewood. I'm not alone, Jaden replied, the truth of the statement striking him forcefully. We have a community here. They've been helping all along. The doctor smiled, making notes in her tablet. That makes all the difference. Support systems heal in ways medicine can't. February brought unexpected news from an unlikely source. The doorman from Jaden's former building called, explaining that mail had accumulated despite his forwarding address. Among the envelopes was a certified letter from Tiffany's mother, Rhonda. Jaden opened it warily, expecting more threats or accusations. Instead, he found a confession and a cashier's check for $42,000. The letter explained that Rhonda had fallen out with her daughter, discovering Tiffany had stolen from her as well. The money represented Rhonda's share of what they had taken from Ellie. I am too old to carry this karma, she wrote. Your mother deserves better than what we did to her. Jaden showed the letter and check to Ellie, who received the news with characteristic equanimity. Even the most hardened heart can find moments of clarity, she observed. Though I notice Angela herself hasn't had such an awakening. They deposited the money in Ellie's account, an unexpected financial breathing space that allowed Jaden to reduce his hours, slightly spending more time at home as his mother's strength continued to fluctuate. March arrived with subtle signs of spring birds returning, early flowers pushing through soil in Walter's garden. Ellie began sitting on the porch on warmer days, wrapped in blankets, watching neighborhood children play with the same fascination she'd always shown for young life. One afternoon, a small girl of about 6 approached the porch, clutching a dandelion. Jaden watched from the window as she solemnly presented the weed to his mother, who accepted it with the grace she might have shown receiving a rare orchid. Pretty flower for a pretty lady, the child announced before skipping away. Ellie twirled the dandelion between her fingers, her expression softening. Children see beauty where adults have learned to see weeds, she told Jaden when he joined her. They haven't yet been taught what to overlook. Jaden considered her words, recognizing his own former blindness. He had overlooked so much: the beauty of his origins, the richness of community not measured in dollars, the quiet dignity with which his mother had faced hardship. As spring progressed, Ellie's physical decline became impossible to ignore. The reduced chemotherapy helped less than they'd hoped. Her appetite diminished until eating became a deliberate act of will rather than pleasure. Sleep grew fragmented, pain more persistent. Home health nurses visited regularly, adjusting medications, offering support that Jaden gratefully accepted while still maintaining his role as primary caregiver. April brought a day of startling clarity amid the general decline. Ellie woke energized, requesting a proper breakfast, her eyes brighter than they'd been in weeks. I want to go to the park today, she announced. The one where you used to play baseball. Jaden hesitated, weighing risk against her evident desire. Are you sure you're strong enough? Mom Ellie's expression brooked no argument. I won't break, Jaden. And if today is good, I want to use it fully. They drove to the small neighborhood park, Ellie insisting on walking the short path to a bench overlooking the baseball diamond. Children played there now, their shouts echoing across the spring air. Ellie watched them, smiling at their unrestrained energy. You were the fastest runner on your team, she remembered aloud. The other mothers always commented on it. I was so proud watching you fly around those bases. Jaden hadn't thought about those games in years, the cheap uniform his mother had carefully washed after each game, the second-hand gloves she'd found at a yard sale, her voice cheering from the sidelines when other players had whole families in attendance. You never missed a game, he realized aloud. Not one, even when you must have been exhausted from work. Ellie's eyes remained on the playing children. That's what love looks like in action, Jaden. Showing up, being present, the expensive things anyone with money can provide those, but presence. That's the true gift. Her words illuminated his entire childhood in a new light. What he had once seen as limitations, his mother's inability to provide material advantages, her insistence on his presence at family dinners, her seemingly old-fashioned values, had actually been expressions of a love more genuine than anything he'd experienced in his adult pursuit of status. They stayed at the park until Ellie grew tired, the good day's energy beginning to ebb. On the drive home, she rolled down the window despite the cool air, letting the breeze touch her face like a caress. That night, after helping her to bed, Jaden found a note she'd left on his pillow. "Thank you for today. For seeing me, not just my illness." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to his eyes. He was learning too late, perhaps, to truly see his mother not as an extension of himself or a role to be played, but as a complete human with her own journey, wisdom, and inherent dignity. April turned to May each day, now measured not by calendar but by Ellie's comfort level. Good days became rare treasures, painful days accepted with quiet grace. The red notebook remained on the kitchen table, untouched, waiting. On a Sunday morning, Walter knocked on their door earlier than usual, his weathered face solemn. Jaden invited him in, but he shook his head. "I just came to tell Eleanor something if she's awake." Jaden led him to his mother's bedroom, where Ellie sat propped against pillows, a book open but unread in her lap. Her face brightened at the sight of her old friend. Walter stood awkwardly at the threshold, hat in hands. "The roses are blooming, Eleanor. The white ones you always admired. I thought you should know." The simple announcement carried weight beyond its words, a recognition of time's passage of beauty continuing its cycle, regardless of human struggle. "Thank you." Walter Ellie replied, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "I'm glad they're thriving." After Walter left, Ellie turned to Jaden, her expression resolute. "Help me outside today. I want to see those roses. Mom, you're not strong enough to walk that far." Ellie's determination was palpable. "Then carry me, son. Some beauty shouldn't be missed." So he did. Wrapped her in blankets, lifted her carefully, shocked by how light she had become, and carried her across the street to Walter's yard, where white roses climbed an ancient trellis, their fragrance sweet in the morning air. Walter brought out a chair, and they sat together among the blooms, three people connected by neighborhood, by history, by the simple act of bearing witness to each other's lives. "Dignity isn't in grand gestures," Ellie said suddenly, breaking the contemplative silence. "It's in how we face what comes, whether challenge or joy, in choosing our response when we can't choose our circumstances." Walter nodded, understanding without need for elaboration. The words settled around them like a benediction, a philosophy distilled from a lifetime of choosing dignity over bitterness, presence over absence. That night, Ellie's condition deteriorated rapidly. Jaden called the hospice nurse, who came quickly adjusting medication, offering comfort measures. "It's time to prepare," she told Jaden gently. "The final transition has begun." Jaden sat beside his mother's bed, holding her increasingly cold hand, watching her labored breathing. Fear and grief warred within him. Fear of losing her, grief for time wasted, opportunities missed, hurts inflicted that could never be fully healed. As midnight approached, Ellie opened her eyes, suddenly lucid. "The red notebook," she whispered. "Bring it now." Jaden retrieved it from the kitchen, placing it in her hands. She opened it to the final pages, her letter to him completed weeks earlier. "Read it," after she instructed, her voice fading. "Not before. Promise me." "I promise, Mom. But please not yet. Stay a little longer." Ellie's smile was radiant despite her weakness. "Death isn't failure, Jaden. It's completion. Every life has its proper length, and mine has been full enough. I've seen my son return to himself. What more could I ask?" Her breathing grew more labored, her grip on his hand weakening. In the dark hours before dawn, with Jaden keeping faithful vigil, Eleanor May Rosewood took her final breath, her face peaceful, the red notebook clutched against her chest. The days that followed passed in a blur of arrangements, condolences, practicalities. The neighborhood rallied around Jaden Walter, handling calls to the funeral home, Brenda organizing food, Mrs. Jenkins closing the diner for the memorial service. People Jaden barely remembered from his childhood appeared, sharing stories of Ellie's kindnesses, small generosities that had meant the world to recipients, but that she had never mentioned. After the memorial, when the house emptied of well-wishers, Jaden finally sat alone at the kitchen table and opened the red notebook to the letter his mother had completed before her death. My dearest son, she had written in her careful hand, when you read this, I will have completed my journey. Don't grieve too deeply. I'm not afraid of what comes next. My greatest fear was always that you would lose yourself in pursuit of things that don't matter. Seeing you find your way back to your true nature has been my final joy. The money that remains is yours, of course. Use it wisely, not to chase status or impermanent pleasures, but to build something meaningful. Perhaps to help others who need second chances as you did. The house is yours as well. Live in it if it brings you peace, or sell it if it holds too many shadows. But remember, this home isn't a place. It's a state of being true to yourself. I found home in raising you in this neighborhood that looks after its own in small dignities preserved through difficult times. Forgiveness isn't something earned then finished. It's a daily choice, a way of moving through the world. I forgave you not because you deserved it, but because bitterness is a poison I refuse to drink. Forgive yourself now, not because you deserve it, but because holding on to guilt dishonors the growth you've shown. If you want to honor my memory, do it by living with open hands, not clenched fists. By recognizing worth in places the world overlooks. By understanding that the most valuable legacy isn't money or property, but how we've treated others along the way. I have loved you from your first breath to my last. That love doesn't end with my death. It continues in the man you choose to become. All my love always. Mom, Jaden read the letter 3 times, tears flowing freely. In death, as in life, his mother's wisdom illuminated paths he might otherwise have missed. Her final gift wasn't the house or the remaining money, it was permission to move forward without the weight of guilt, to transform remorse into purpose. In the weeks that followed, Jaden established a routine both familiar and new. He continued working at the diner, finding unexpected satisfaction in the honest labor and community connections. He maintained the house with careful attention, preserving Ellie's touch, while gradually making space for his own presence. He started a small foundation with his mother's remaining funds, providing emergency assistance to elderly residents facing medical crises. The Eleanor Rosewood Dignity Fund. He named it, working with local churches to identify those in need. Summer returned to South Central, the cycle continuing. Jaden planted flowers in the small front yard, marigold zinnias and white roses from cuttings Walter provided. Each morning he sat on the porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood awaken, nodding to passing residents who now greeted him as one of their own. One evening, as he watered the newly established garden, a car slowed in front of the house. The window rolled down, revealing a face he had hoped never to see again. Tiffany, her expression unreadable. Jaden straightened the hose still running in his hand. "What are you doing here?" She looked different, less polished, more genuine somehow. "I heard about your mother," she said, her voice lacking its former artificial sweetness. "I'm sorry. She deserved better than what we did to her." The simple acknowledgement, coming months too late, ignited a brief flare of anger in Jaden's chest. Then, remembering his mother's words about forgiveness being a choice, he felt the emotion subside, replaced by something close to pity. "Yes, she did," he agreed quietly. "She deserved better from both of us." Tiffany seemed surprised by his calm response. "My mother told me she returned some money. I wanted you to know. I'm trying to change too. To stop running cons, stop using people. It's harder than I thought it would be." Jaden considered her words, hearing echoes of his own difficult journey toward authenticity. "We become what we practice, Tiffany. My mother taught me that. If you practice deception long enough, it becomes your nature. But you can practice something different." Tiffany nodded, unexpected tears in her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. To her through you." Jaden resumed watering the flowers, a deliberate return to the nurturing work at hand. "My mother believed everyone deserves a second chance. Not because they've earned it, but because offering it makes us more human. I hope you find your way." As Tiffany drove away, Jaden felt a subtle shift within himself, a loosening of resentment, a step further along the path his mother had illuminated. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting or excusing. It was refusing to be defined by past wounds, choosing instead to live from a place of hard-won wisdom. That night he added a new entry to the red notebook, continuing the conversation with his mother that transcended her physical absence. "I'm learning, Mom, every day, learning to see beauty in ordinary places, to value connection over acquisition, to forgive not because it's deserved, but because it frees me to move forward. Your lessons continue, your love remains. And in that continuity, I find the strength to become someone worthy of your faith in me." The words weren't enough. No words could be to express the transformation he had undergone. But they were a marker of the journey, a recognition of growth still unfolding, a promise to continue becoming the man his mother had always seen within him, even when he had lost sight of himself. Outside, a soft rain began to fall, nourishing the newly planted garden. Inside in the house that had witnessed both betrayal and redemption, Jaden Rosewood continued writing by lamplight, adding his story to his mother's, creating a legacy not of wealth or status, but of returned dignity, reclaimed humanity and love that transcended even death's final boundary.